Hey guys, welcome back to part two of our Cross Peen Hammer. We have already hardened our hammer, and now what's happening is we are coming out of our Paragon furnace and we are actually tempering this. This is 1075 steel. The aggravation with some of my equipment is that my readout on the Paragons in Celsius, so I have to be careful and make sure I got the right math. But anyway, I think we've got it pretty good. But now this piece has been hardened and tempered, and now it's time to clean it up. Now, one of the things that we do here in the shop that makes life a whole lot easier is we actually sandblast the hammerhead before we actually go in and wire brush it. Sandblasting takes a lot of the heavy scale off of it, and it really makes for a better finish when you go to the wire brush. And before anybody says anything, yes, I absolutely wear gloves when I am working with a wire wheel. I know there's a huge, peanut gallery out there about gloves and rotating tools. And the thing is when I have done buffing and things like this, I have found gloves allow me to do a better job. I've never had an issue with grab whatsoever. It's not a lathe, it's not a milling machine, but maybe I'll be apologizing later. Now, once this piece has been done, what happens now is that I need to come in and clean up and mirror polish the faces. This is not necessary, but when somebody is going to pay me money for a hammer, I want it to be shiny. I want everybody to open up and go, ooh, very, very shiny. And this is actually a very time-consuming process. I'm probably a little low on my prices for the amount of time that goes into cleaning these things up, because to get that mirror polish, you need to go through 3 or 4 different grit steps. And I almost hate this went in. So these are very expensive machines. They're great machines. But the problem is that my belts were exposed to a bit of moisture and they curl up. And if you've ever used a 2x72 400 grit belt that's basically turned into a, a curly piece, you're going to learn to cuss a lot. And so it's my fault for not having my belts weighted in the shop. But so uh, this was painful. It took me forever to get this belt running true. But there again, it's done. And what's happening now is that platen is actually a very special platen, thanks to Braid and Kevin Rourke and his team out there in California. Braid produces a great machine, and this is actually what they call a rotary platen. There's actually a rubber belt that runs behind the sanding belt, and what that does is it gives it just a little bit of cushion, and it allows you to use these high grit belts, and it blends everything in just beautifully. The last belt that I'm using here is actually a cork belt, and what I will do is I'll actually treat this with a white polishing compound. I'm loading up the belt there. Cork belts, I think, are highly underrated. I have found great use for mine. But again, the cork gives it a little bit of cushion, and that rubber backing gives it a little bit of cushion. And when this thing comes off of there, it's going to be super pretty. The last thing that I'll end up doing, kind of just for fun to make sure that everything's well blended in, is once that face is super polished, I will actually go to a loose muslin buff, and I'm actually going to buff the entirety of the hammer. Now, only the surfaces that I really worked on the striking surfaces are going to be mirror polished, but by buffing the whole thing, it just kind of blends everything in, and it ends up making a very, very attractive piece. Now, of course, it is time to put the handle on. We use native pecan. It's pecan for you folks from the south. We actually cut these trees down, and this has been drying. Now, what I did here, if you're freaking out that the circle is offset, don't sweat it. It is just kind of a guide to give me an idea of how much material I need to take off both sides. There's like not a really great way to carve down a hammer handle to fit the eye. You simply have to kind of eyeball it And the only thing I can tell you that when you're cutting a handle for a hammer is keep it square. If you'll notice, I've actually got a platen. The platen is set up with a work rest, and keeping it square when you're actually sizing it is probably one of the most critical things you can do. Here, I am just rounding those edges. Now, the other great thing about a platen is that you can do this. Once you've kind of got everything worked out where you want it, being able to put it on that long run evens all the bumps out, makes everything's nice and smooth. And then the final thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to run this over a 220 belt to really smooth out everything. Now, you can spend a lot of time finishing up a handle. You can, but field grade, you'll be fine. Now we're going to use the bandsaw to actually split the top so we can use our wedge. Nice and handy. And now it goes into the hammer. And this is always so cool. This is my favorite little physics trick here. We'll get it started, and we don't hammer it right down to the table. We just let the inertia of the hammerhead drive that wood right through there. I thought that was one of the coolest things I ever saw when I first saw somebody do it. But it drives it right through. Now we take a wooden wedge. Now, again, my editor guy puts in stuff that I wish he hasn't. But so what's happened here is normally if I had remembered, when you make that bandsaw cut, because that's going to close up, I use a chisel or something to kind of give myself a little bit of a runway. It makes putting that wedge in there a little easier. So I was improvising, so don't give me no crap. I drive the wedge in tightly. Now you can take a saw and trim this off, but I'm kind of going to show off my mirror braid, and I'm going to jack this joker up to 30 horsepower, and we're just going to go, and it's going to be done. I cannot tell you how much satisfaction I get from making it disappear like that. That's just so awesome. It will also do that to your fingers if you're not careful. So just, safety tip there. Once that's done, I'll take an iron wedge, pop in there. Now, the only thing I don't like about hammers with high cheeks is that you can crack the top of that handle a little bit. But hey, it works. A little bit of hand sanding, and then I take our mix of linseed oil and mineral spirits. The mineral spirits is just to kind of thin it a bit. I'll spray everything down, the handle and the hammerhead. Normally, we actually have the soaked linseed handles, but we were running a little short here. Rub it down. Then we'll take a rag and wipe off the excess. And, yeah, I try to soak that bad boy just as much as I can there, especially if I'm freehanding it there. Don't want no comments. We wipe it off, and we should have a rather attractive and very handy hammer handle. Guys, I hope you have enjoyed these new series of videos. I know I have been enjoying putting them out. But guys, thank you again for watching, and we will catch you next time.